Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's second video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days for today's second video, which takes us into the first week of April. We'll be able to extend out beyond that with the extended GFS and ECM ensembles, which run to around a couple of weeks. We'll have a look at CFSV2 for the next month at the end of the video. Going to begin with the Arctic and North Atlantic oscillations. But to just say that 5-day forecast has been released, so it's going to be a much more unsettled 5 days coming up. Low pressure going to be in control, and that will be bringing showers or longer spells of rain. Some quite strong winds and lower temperatures as well. So all change over the warm, dry conditions that we've had in the past few weeks, particularly over Easter. Have a look at 5-day forecast, see what's happening. This video will extend out beyond the 5-day forecast period. So we're going to begin with the Arctic oscillation observed and forecast chart. The black line here shows where we've been with the Arctic oscillation. The red line's at the end where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the Arctic oscillation to go. Remember, it's just an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state. It doesn't drive anything in its own terms. It's just tells you what the atmosphere is doing. When the Arctic oscillation is positive, you're going to have a low pressure up over the pole, and you'll typically be strengthening the westerly zonal flow. When the Arctic oscillation is negative, you'll tend to have high pressure blocking up over the pole, and when that happens, you tend to go into cold weather in the winter. In the summer, that could be quite a cool, wet type signal. This is where we are right now. We are on the positive side with the Arctic oscillation. We have a positive AO. We was negative earlier on in April. We've gone up to positive now. GFS ensembles are keeping the Arctic oscillation weekly positive for the next few days. And then we have a real split as we go through the early part of May. So we've got several members of the GFS ensembles that are going into negative territory, several that are staying in positive territory. So this tells us there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of the broad overall northern hemispheric pattern as we're moving through into the early part of May. North Atlantic oscillation is trending more clearly with the GFS ensemble. So where we are right now is positive with the NAO, but the GFS ensembles are generally forecast as we get through to the early part of May, a negative phase of the North Atlantic oscillation. So again, it's just an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state, this time in the North Atlantic as opposed to the Arctic. So when you've got a positive NAO, such as you've got now, then you've got low pressure around Iceland and high pressure strengthened around the Azores. Again, that will tend to strengthen the zonal westerly flow. But when the NAO goes negative, you tend to have higher pressure around Iceland and Greenland and lower pressure around the Azores. So it looks as though the NAO, as you get through to the early part of May, is shifting more definitively onto the negative side compared to the AO, which is quite interesting. Normally over the past few months anyway, it's tended to be the AO that has been definitively shifting into negative territory at times, but it looks like a bit of a change on that through the early part of May, with the NAO being the index that's going more definitively negative, and the AO kind of like split. There's the AO again quite split really through the early part of May, NAO quite definitively going into negative territory. So quite interesting what's going on there. We will be keeping a close eye on the AO and the NAO over the next few days. GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. We're looking at Birmingham today. So red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average for Birmingham. Still quite warm today. We've still got the legacy of the warm air that we've established over the past few days, last week or so. But it's pretty much downhill all the way. And so by the time we get through to the end of this week, so from tomorrow to Friday into weekend, upper air temperatures are looking quite cool. Next week, it looks as though they're lifting up a little bit, going back closer towards the 30-year upper air temperature average. Although you wouldn't say we're necessarily going back into a particularly warm phase of weather through those opening days of May. In a more extended range, there's a lot of scatter. So we have got some genuinely quite hot ensemble members. That one, for example, it's a clear outlier, but that does get really quite hot. It goes up to 15 Celsius at 850 HPA, which in May is probably going to be enough to lift the temperature to around 30 degrees. So certainly mid to upper 20s Celsius temperatures. So that one's a bit of a hot outlier, but there are several others actually that are trending quite warm. We may, as we get through towards the end of the first week of May and on to the second week of May, we could be seeing the first signs of a little bit of a push-up in the temperature there. Wouldn't necessarily go as far as say a heat wave, but we could be just seeing one or two hints there. The temperatures could get a lot warmer at the very end of the first week of May into the second week of May. However, we can't rule out these or discount these colder ensemble members just here. So it may be something, it may be nothing. It does look much more unsettled though now. So the first of the showers are coming through today. Could be some thunderstorms mixed in, and generally just looks really quite unsettled for Birmingham over the next couple of weeks. Plenty of precipitation spikes coming up, so a very different complexion to the weather now for the end of April and into the start of May. Temperature anomalies from the 24th of April to the 2nd of May, very close to average. Possibly a little bit on the milder than average side for the north, near normal down across the south, I would have thought. Not a big deviation either way. Precipitation anomalies look a little bit drier than average in the north, interestingly, and close to or slightly above average down in the south, which is a little bit of a turnaround on what you tend to expect. Well, you tend to expect the north to be wetter than the south. This could be indicative of some blocking high pressure and also potentially a little bit of a southerly tracking jet stream. Again, not a big deviation though either way. So temperature and precipitation anomalies aren't coming out all that far from average in the next week. This is how the GFS 6 o'clock operational run was looking for Saturday when it updated earlier on today. And Saturday's forecast is start off quite wet and windy. Could be gale force winds in the far west and southwest of the country with outbreaks of rain clearing away into the North Sea. By Sunday, we're starting to build up this little ridge of high pressure from the southwest, so that brings improvements as we go through to the start of next week. This is Monday, 29th of April. High pressure is building to our east and northeast again, trying to turn the wind into the east, and in fact that does bring the wind into the east through the course of next week. So this low pressure being pushed down to the southwest as a high pressure turns winds into the east. Back to reasonably dry weather, especially for northern and eastern parts of the country, but probably with a bit of a chilly easterly wind on the east coast. Retrogression takes place on this particular GFS run, so you'll see that on Tuesday next week the high pressure is starting over Scandinavia. There's a high pressure just there. By the time you get through to Thursday next week, that high pressure has retrogressed to Greenland. There it is, sitting over Greenland at 1,045 millibars. Retrogression, therefore, is where you take pressure from east to west in that direction, as opposed to the normal zonal flow, which is west to east. In our part of the world, in the northern hemisphere, the zonal flow, the flow where things should generally typically be moving from, is a west to east flow. But sometimes that west to east progression fails, and when that happens you can get retrogression, where you push normally high pressure, occasionally it can be low pressure, but normally it's high pressure, where you push it from east to west. So that's what's going on there. A little bit of retrogression of the high pressure from Scandinavia to Greenland. What it really means is that low pressure, as this high pressure becomes centred over Greenland, at this time of year and into the summer, you'll tend to get low pressure and the jet stream moving underneath it. So it turns cooler through the second half of next week on this particular GFS run, and more unsettled as well, with low pressure developing in situ over the country, but also out in the Atlantic as well. That's day 10, Saturday the 4th of May, blocking area of high pressure over Greenland, low pressure both to the east, north and west and south of the UK, telling us that it turns increasingly cool and unsettled through the course of next week. Into more extended range, we start to try and raise the heights to the south, so that blocking high pressure retrogresses further from Greenland to Canada, goes over there, and that allows high pressure to begin to try to start building up from the Azores. So that's trying to push up much warmer air from the south and the southwest there as we're heading into the extended range. This is Bank Holiday Monday, the 6th of May. We're close to pulling up some really much warmer air from the south, but actually it does look quite unsettled with low pressure still rolling in from off the Atlantic. But in the more extended range, this high pressure begins to build from the south. So that's how we finish up. It's a long way out. It's over 2 weeks away. It's Friday the 10th of May. But the high pressure is beginning to build up over the top of the UK, so possibly hinting that in the second week of May things could turn drier and warmer, perhaps as we lose that northern blocking. GFS parallel run looks like that again, starting off quite wet and windy, especially for England and Wales on Saturday. Into Sunday, we try to build a bit of a ridge, but that doesn't come to much, so low pressure is moving back in off the Atlantic through Monday next week. Into next week, you'll notice we don't get anywhere near as much high pressure over Scandinavia, and we certainly don't get it to Greenland. So the parallel run looking very, very different for next week compared to the operational GFS run. And this does tell us, it confirms how much uncertainty we've got within the weather pattern for next week, certainly within the GFS output. It tells us that things are very, very uncertain still for next week. So instead of having a 1,045 millibar area of high pressure over Greenland next Thursday, 2nd of May, what we actually have is a ridge covering southern England and much of central and northern Europe. So that's a much drier and warmer scenario through the middle part of next week, especially so that the south. And as we head up towards day 10, we actually start to pull up some really very warm air from the south. That is day 10. It's certainly the 5th of May. It's into a May Day bank holiday weekend, and you'd not be surprised to get temperatures up to mid-20s Celsius with that, with plenty of sunshine too. So really, really different for next week and into a bank holiday weekend for the GFS parallel run compared to the GFS operational run. So that takes us to Bank Holiday Monday. Low pressure started moving off the Atlantic, coming into warm air. That could trigger some heavy showers or thunderstorms. There's the upper air temperatures for Bank Holiday Monday, looking really, really warm indeed, baking those orange colours. And then in a more extended range, what happens is that we turn things more unsettled to the north and west, but in the southeast, we are actually still quite close to a ridge of high pressure. So clearly the parallel GFS run is by far the warmer and drier scenario of the two. Just going to have to answer the phone. Right, we're back. Sorry about that again. So another telephone interruption. There's always something happening at Gav's Weathervids towers to interrupt videos. I'm going to have to start unplugging the phone, I think, when we're doing the videos. There's always somebody ringing up or dropping in to interrupt us. Anyway, we shall get on with the video. So we finished off at 384 hours with a parallel GFS run for Friday the 10th of May. We have low pressure up to the northwest of Scotland. High pressure is across some parts of England. And so the driest, warmest weather with that would be in the south. By far the parallel GFS run is the warmest and driest of the two GFS runs today. Moving on to the ECMWF operational run. This is how things are looking for Saturday. Wet and windy as low pressure rattles in from off the Atlantic, particularly affecting England and Wales. That low pressure is clearing away on Sunday, and we're building up a little bit of a ridge out to the west of the country. And then into next week, well, low pressure sits out to the west of the UK. High pressure is trying to build to the north and to the east of us. Heading up towards day 10, taking us into the May Day bank holiday weekend. If anything, we're trying to build up a ridge out to our west then, and possibly pulling in some slightly cooler northerly or northeasterly winds. However, with that high pressure building up, that could be good news for the May Day bank holiday weekend. It looks as though things are up for grabs for the May Day bank holiday weekend at the moment, I have to say. We did the second update last night. It was a very poor update indeed, but I think things could start trending a little bit drier and warmer here over the next day or two for the May Day bank holiday weekend. So just watch this space. That doesn't look a bad chart, really, although it would be quite cool, something to start off with. As this high pressure builds, things could get increasingly better through that weekend. Let's have a look at the options that are on the table within the ECM ensembles today by the Icelandic Met Office. These are the options that we've got for day 10, which is the 4th of May. So we've got 22 members of the ECM ensembles, including the control and operational ECM run, the operational being run that's just looking at, of course, that have high pressure out to the west of the country, low pressure is to our east, so we're pulling in a rather cool northwesterly wind with that one. Then we've got 18 members of the ECM ensembles with a ridge of high pressure over top of the UK. Low pressure is out to our west, the flow and the jet. Going to be going something like that. So a reasonable amount of dry, fine weather on off with those 18. And then we've got 11 that have high pressure up towards Greenland and Iceland. A bit of a blocking signal. They are reasonably dry, but they'll be pulling in colder north to northeasterly winds there for the start of May. In 2 weeks' time, these are the options that we've got within the ECM ensembles. This is for the 9th of May, 360 hours away. We've got 25 members of the ECM ensembles with a ridge of high pressure to our southwest, low pressure up to the north. That looks quite nice. That will bring reasonably dry and relatively warm weather too, as the wind's coming up from the southwest. Then there's 14 that are unsettled. Low pressure is to the north and west of the UK. We bring through this flat westerly flow, so obviously that's just quite an unsettled scenario of those 4. And then we've got 12 that have high pressure around Greenland and Iceland, so still northern blocking, low pressure to our south and southeast. Again, not particularly unsettled, but certainly quite cool, bringing in north-easterly type winds, and for the south anyway, could be rather showery at the very least. There's a lot of options are on the table here for the early part of May. So May really does, certainly the early part of May, really does look to be quite a puzzle at the moment. As I explained in past videos, May is often one of our more complicated months to forecast for, along with September, although they do tend to have different reasons why that is the case. Finally, CFSV2, so these are 500 millibar heights broken down into weekly periods. The first week period will take us from the 24th through to the 30th of April. The coming week we'll have below average heights over and to the west of the UK, a blocking signal up to the north, rather cool, rather unsettled. The flow and the jet is going something like that. Week 2 is the 1st to the 7th of May, with below average heights in the middle of the North Atlantic, above average heights building to our south and southwest, and we're bringing in more of a southwesterly wind with that. So it's turning drier, particularly for the south, and it's also turning warmer as well, as the wind is pulling up from the central part of the Atlantic Ocean. Week 3 is the 8th to the 14th of May. Again, below average heights out to the northwest of us, above average heights across Spain and Portugal, bringing in a westerly flow. So, again, probably quite unsettled for the north and west, drier to the south, temperatures probably quite mild. And then we go through to week 4, which is the 15th to 21st of May. A little bit different with this one. We've got a blocking signal around Greenland with below average heights to the southwest of the UK and Ireland. Possibly quite warm, but also probably quite unstable. Maybe even the hints have been a little bit thundery with that. The low pressure there to west of Ireland could act as a trigger if we're pulling up warm or hot southerly winds to generate some thundery outbreaks and thundery downpours. However, that is a very odd looking chart that we finish off with there in week 4, so I don't think we take that particularly seriously, particularly in light of the fact that in the next week or 10 days we've got a lot of complications here between the GFS Operation Parallel runs and also between the GFS and the ECM WF. So it's all up for grabs really, I think, early May. There's still a lot of questions to answer about this early May period next week, running up to the May Day bank holiday weekend. It's causing a lot of confusion within the model output. So until it begins to settle down, it will do in the next day or so, then we've just got to wait and see. And obviously anything beyond that, going further into May, is going to be very uncertain indeed. So we shall be keeping you posted over the next few days. Right, that's it for today's videos. I found them interesting and informative. We'll be back tomorrow with another week to 10-day video update. I think the first video update tomorrow, will be the JMA 3 monthly look ahead. So that's going to take us through May, June and July. That'll be the first video up tomorrow. The sort of late spring to mid-summer update from the JMA. That's all for now though, and thanks for watching.